Chapter 5. A Kiss Goodbye. The Misfits travel the trail to the east, barely getting enough sleep after the Sligo encounter. Tabio and Goodby gave an arm around Brian, helping the large Baltaris walk with his missing foot. It still stung the horned man, but it was the pain that made him feel so alive. The new Misfits followed the old, watching the Lyconian carry a tired Juno in a piggyback. Lynn led the group. Only sounds let the crew know that the hunter was out there. "Are you okay, Kiki?" Yennefer told her friend, brushing up to her with a flick of her ears, worried after last night. Oh, Kiki didn't get enough sleep, as she felt the slimy saliva tickle her foot. The young Vulpes had bags under her eyes, jolting from the Centilope's touch. She calms her nerves, giving her a false smile to show she's fine, even when she's not. "Oh yeah, I'm totally fine," Okiki said with a strain in her voice, twitching from the lack of sleep. Yennefer droops her ears, knowing that she was just putting on a strong face. Ribley paces her walk, passing by the two female friends. The two flicked their ears as the Panruse bard played little chimes from her lute. "Worry not, sisters. An encounter that everyone walks away from is a blessing to be sung in song." Ribley winks at the two, not really soothing their inquiry. Tulee was surprised that everyone came out. Byron was destined for death, yet another power saved him. If it was his pagan god or anything, it was a question for another. She kept quiet as she sheepishly followed Lynn, carrying the slumbering half-born. Juno had just fallen asleep not too long ago. Her body forced her to snore softly, sounding like a high-pitched whistle. "Are you getting tired over there, Tulee?" Lynn said, as she gave her a glance behind while they moved. Tulee flicks her ears, with confusion, one down, and the other one straight up, feeling like it wasn't a question to be answered. Even if she's fat down there, she's pretty light for a sentient. Tulee felt the little strain hanging down her back, while Juno's slouched position didn't faze the woman. Lynn chuckled, finding amusement in what she called Juno fat. Tulee adjusted the half-born, bouncing her up, while the slumbering beauty nuzzled on her cheek. Juno's eyes strained as she had day terrors playing in her mind. "Cal, I'm sorry," Juno said in the Lyconian's ear, making her sigh when the half-born said it so earnestly. Lynn did droop her ears, observing the dense trees around her. She was grateful that Calcanus did his job, protecting sentience as the serpent slayer. His absence unnerved her. That man shouldn't be tracking the unknown alone. Lynn said while she observed, flicking her ears in shock for caring, just a tad. Tulee snarls with a bit of frustration, still bitter about Lynn's acceptance of the hunter. He was still the one who killed her mate. Vengeance should still cloud her. "Why do you care?" Tulee lets it slip, flicking her ears with shock. She didn't think her words through. Lynn just continued walking, ignoring her accidental question. Tulee knew she heard it. The ear flicked told all. Tulee was just going to act like she didn't say anything until Lynn opened her lips. "Well, it's because our little rabbit cares for him," Lynn said as she didn't look back, having Tulee raise her head. Tulee looks at the soft half-born on her shoulders as she felt her breathing slip down her ears. "We don't have a lot of maid members anymore, Tulees. It's just Goodby and us two." Lynn pointed out, drooping her ears, reflecting bad memories not too far ago. Tulee thought about it. Juno hasn't been with the group for even a year. Who made that happen? Tulee countered, having Lynn look behind her. Lynn's expression was cold one that wouldn't have any of that scorn. I told Juno that day. Lynn said with anger tempered yet present, reflecting on the past. Tulee already blamed herself with a sliver of guilt, yet it stung to know that Lynn didn't forget. The hunter raided the camp after Tulee's mistake, as she avoided the gaze. No matter how we feel, Tulee's Calcanus is one of us. The orcs got him out of the bounty. He sits around and plays poker with them. After what he did last night, he is part of our pack. Lynn told the conflicted Lyconian, turning around while she held her arms back, walking, while she observed the new members. The only one that might stick around is Tabio. Ribley would leave after she finds another muse. Brian would settle now that he's footless. The friends want out. And Piff is a coward. Lynn listed, having no faith in the new bodies they surround themselves with. Tulee knew that her concerns were valid. Numbers were the only reason these new people followed. Tulee watches the crowd behind her as Delson blankly walks from the back. What about him? Tulee didn't specify, but Lynn knew who she was talking about. Don't know if we should sell him or keep him as Juno's pet, Lynn said with a half-joking tone, smiling like a demon while she looked at the otherworlder. Delson notices Lynn's gaze as the centalope gave him a playful wink. Delson blushes and rubs his neck, knowing nothing about Lynn treating him like property in her mind. Lynn swirls back around as they continued the road to find a nearby settlement when one became visible. Scene. You sure you're all right here, Pastor? Lynn asked Brian as the Misfits found themselves a half-mile walk from the nearest settlement. The gates had a message spelled in blood. The weak shall meet our fangs, and the mixed and earless must be slaves. They headed into the secluded area nearby, next to a river, filled with forageables. I'll be fine here. I'm more worried about your group, Miss Lynn. The settlement screams, high evolutionary, Brian commented, as that was the only mind the others had. Okiki, Yennefi, and Piff would be staying behind for fear of being kidnapped again. Tabio offered the band of misfits to keep an eye on the second group. Don't worry, leader, I will keep them safe until your scary orc buddies sniff our scent, Tabio assured as he carved out another statue of a female body. Calcanus squints from his odd obsession with making these statues, for each one had a different woman. Tabio noticed, giving a chuckle from the confusion. This one is inspired by my fourth babe mama. I remember how much trouble we went through, and also that she had a mole on her rear, Tabio said as he carves a small mole on the curvy statue. The ladies didn't find his hobby amusing, except Ribley. Yet that was all Lynn needed as the group of 7 congregated together. The 7 misfits observed the walled settlement of Highklaw. The audible fights and screaming echoed through their ears. Do we have to go? Delson said as he slouched, with the rest of them giving him an annoyed look. You could always stay here. I assure you that if anybody from the settlement sees you and the hunter, both of you are dead, Tulee said, popping her hip out, wagging her tail with amusement. Delson gave a soft cry, while Calculus grumbles with uncertainty. Juno looks at Cal with concern, as his leg still has the noticeable stitching from last night. She was worried that if anything happened in Highklaw, Cal would be at a disadvantage. Juno droops her ears as she feels her seeds and checks her arquebus, while Calculus notices. I can assure you that I have lived through worse. Worry about yourself for a change, Calculus said, with a bit of annoyance, making the half-born flick her ears in shock. Ribley was enjoying their banter, stringing along a soothing melody. The others looked at her for a change, wondering why she was coming. Ribley had an idea of what the crew was thinking, giving them an answer. I feel like traveling with your lot would broaden my horizons, Ribley said, as she continued to play her lute, swaying her hips with the flow of music. Goodboy liked how her body moved, panting while she spaced out. Tulee gave the Infenril a look, annoyed by his shameless nature. Goodboy knows what's good, Goodboy said, as he ignored her gaze, making the Lyconian snarl at him. Lynn was a little quiet from the crew, almost like she had an idea. She then smiles as she straightens her back, places her wrist on her hip. I have an idea, Lynn said with a shark smile. Oh no, Tulee droops her ears and said. Scene. Lynn marches away like a wind-up wooden doll, smiling as she had 3 chains slung on her arms. Beside her was Tulee, Goodboy, and Ribley, as they were the only 2 who didn't have any affiliation with humans. The Razorfang initiates acted like guards for the settlement, a clan of Lyconians that dabble in slavery and banditry. They snarled at the sight from the front gate, licking their fangs at the odd travelers. Do you think this is some type of carnival back on the homeland? The Razorfang's condescending tone, walking up to the group with a strut. The other heavily toned Lyconian chuckled as he played around with his sizable battle axe. The 7 stood their ground as the small Centelope took the lead. What do you mean? My friends and I are just passers-by with some human cargo. We just have to see if there are any buyers around, Lynn said as she looked behind her, having Juno, Calculus, and Delson in loose chains, tight enough to fool the razor claws. Juno didn't have a wardrobe change, while the boys both lacked a wardrobe change. Juno blushes as the raw raven hair that spread across Cal's chest, neatly, weaving into his lean muscles, expressing the usually blank face he had. Delson still had some developing, but his prior life in the other world had kept him well kept in muscle density as he cries softly. Should trade these humans to the gourmet before selling them here. I think you lost, the Razorfang said while waving for them to leave. Lynn shakes her head, pulling on their chains to enter the settlement. The 2 blocked her entrance by showing their blades, while Lynn gave the men a tempered look. The tall Lyconian snarls as he gets into her face, having Tulee take her place. The 2 Lyconians gave each other a silent gaze, sizing each other out. The male then looks down at her mounds, liking how toned she is underneath. Don't you think it's a bit foolish to act brave in the presence of slavers, miss? The male said, as the built Lyconian got in her space as well. Tulee didn't show any fear to the males, having them assess that she was more of a badass than they thought. She was built like a warrior, the Centelope and Panrius made them look weak. "You sure that you aren't the leader of this carnival, female?" the big male asked, as he observed Lynn and Ribley stringing her lute while she hums. Lynn showed the spread of knives around her waist, while the Razorfangs saw some dry blood on a couple. The large male laughed as he accepted that the Centelope was a killer. He then flicks his ears as he saw Goodboy, scratching his head with some confusion. "Have I seen you before, Mutt?" the large Lyconian asked him, as Goodboy remained cool beneath the towering body. He kept up his smile, which made Juno think, what is wrong with him? She forgets that the Misfits are filled with nothing but killers, ones who survived the triangle far longer than she ever did. "I did some business over here years back, left the life behind me," Goodboy said with his natural cheering voice, yet it sounded off to Juno. She noticed that she wasn't the only one, with Tulee and Lynn staring at him in shock. The lean Razorfang flicked his ears as he realized who Goodboy was. "You're the golden bastard, aren't you?" The lean male snapped his fingers as Goodboy nodded his head with the same goofy energy. Good had only joined the Misfits a few years ago. His lore wasn't as vast as other members. He was always silent about his past, never telling a soul about it, not even to Tulee. "Let them through. We have a returning courier." The Lyconians stepped out of their way, making the two male members blink in confusion. A courier was a fancier way of saying slaver, not what anybody would think of from Goodboy. Goodboy walks past the guards while they crew process, wagging his tail as he turns back. He locks eyes with Tulee, showing more swagger than he usually showed. "Oh, are you guys coming in?" he said with a charming smile, acting like a smooth operator. The Lyconian couldn't help but blush at the power behind him. Calcanus never had a good opinion of Goodboy, but he nods at the Infenral's aura. Juno droops her ears after figuring out that Goodboy was a former slaver, expecting a person with the name Goodboy to be good. Whatever happened back in the day is behind him, so the crew followed in. Lynn walks by, but had a nervous sweat from the Infenral's aura. "Make sure your pets stay obedient. We have free rein to kill any disruptive bunches." The large Lyconian warned the party, eyeing Juno with hungry eyes. The smaller male eyes the cowardly Delson, playfully biting his teeth, taunting the shackled human. Calcanus walks with a strong and firm stride as the Razorfangs snarl at his demeanor. The large one grabs Cal's arm, making the naked hunter look at his grab with an annoyed look. "Wait, does this one look familiar?" the large Lyconian said as he stared daggers. The smaller one looks deeper at the unarmored hunter, snarling as well. Lynn clicks her tongue. They were close to entering without making the town hostile. Tulee wished that the hunter could at least show some fear, yet he stares into the Lyconian's eyes with his blank stare. The Lyconian looks at the hunter's scarred leg, going back in his face. "Looks like a slago got you not too long ago. It should be a painful wound you have. Yet, there is no strain. Hey, wasn't there a beast slayer a couple of months back, one that wore some snake-scaled armor?" the Lyconian observed, making the girls sweat. Lynn was going through many thoughts, yet she just let something out. "He's from the mainland. We captured him, so he could be my mate's slave." Lynn blurted out, making Juno gasp with a flushed face. The guards were skeptical about her claim, as the lean one got in her space. Her claims didn't have any basis, so the hunter sighed and played it out. "Oh, my sweet Venus, how long you left me without grain to feed, how long you left me thirsty without water." Calcanus contorted his face to look more unhinged and perverted. He falls on the floor and crawls toward Lynn like a savage animal. Juno shudders at the mention of the verse. Her eyes grow hollow as she observes this play. Lynn starts to freak out as the hunter wraps his arms around her brown pelt legs. "What are you doing?" Lynn screams at Cal as Tulee diverted her eyes and gave a chuckle. Ribley whistled at the act, pulling her notebook and scribbling some words. Calcanus climbs up to the bare skin on her thighs, giving them a lick to add emphasis. Lynn grits her teeth as she blushes. Masked with frustration, her back tingles from the gross display. Delson covers his face, making a little gasp while he diverts his body. The Lyconians found this act too weird, choosing to leave the freaks alone. Just leave them alone, psycho rabbits are always the kinky ones. The Lyconians went back to their posts. Calcanus gave a devious smile as he won this game of play. He then noticed that the group was very quiet as he still held on to Lynn's thighs. He looked up, seeing the scorn of the Centilope duo. Tulee giggled out loud as she finally saw the hunter show actual fear, gulping with a nervous sweat. "Guess a certain dog needs some training," Lynn said as she twitched her left ear. "Calcanus, you know how I feel about the old man," Juno said with a sinister background, which was drowned by her fake smile. Calcanus could only twitch his lip as he didn't want to know what was next. "I'm very sorry," Calcanus said, feeling like it was becoming a catchphrase. Scene. The Misfits navigated through the settlement of Highklaw, remaining alert as the residents stared. They made sure to keep their voices to a whisper as they discussed their next plan. Lynn softly nudges the chains on Juno and Delson while yanking on Cal S. Calcanus grunts from the force, yet tames himself after getting a brush on his traitor mark on his left cheek. Lynn was more interested in talking about Goodboy, especially after they got a free pass from him. "So, are we going to talk about you being a slaver?" Lynn asked the Golden in Fenrir as he followed behind her. Tulee wanted to know too, no matter how impressive his free pass was. A retired slaver was a slaver nonetheless. Juno remained cautious with Goodboy, having some bad memories of slavers, very sticky ones. Ribley just continued to play her lute. Delson looked lost in the conversation. Calcanus didn't care. "Don't know what to say, leader. We all had to live in the triangle besides. None of our hands are clean." Goodboy defended his reason, which Lynn accepted. He wasn't wrong. Everyone except Juno, Delson, and Ribley has done worse than slave trading. Tulee looks at Goodboy with a bit of hesitation, not having good memories of slavers either. Goodboy just smiles at her, wagging his tail with interest. "Besides, now I'm with you guys. Goodboy knows good people, especially how safe I feel with you around." Goodboy directed at Tulee, making her blush bashfully and diverting her face away. Juno blushes as well, never seeing Tulee ever act like a female before. Lynn sighs, continuing her train of thought as they walked, following the trail to the nearest inn. "I just thought that we could get some info on this Dollface, but does anyone see what I'm seeing?" Lynn scouts around. Her question whetted everyone's curiosity. Calcanus is already seeing something off. The Misfits scratched their heads as Lynn swivels her body and walks backwards. She nods at Calcanus, who had an idea. There are chimeras here in cages, or hiding their features. Calcanus nodded at one of the beggars in the street, who had rags over their body. Tulee thought he was full of shit, yet she saw horns and a feline tail. The unidentifiable sentient stared at the group, while other beings did the same. A female sithcutal with heterochromia stared at the group in her cage, acting very suspicious for being a slave. She didn't have a tail to wag. She wasn't born with one, having more earless genetics. That girl doesn't have the look of a captured sentient. She's spying on us, Tulee pointed out, knowing what desperation brings to a captured being. A couple more blocks had the same results. The people of Highklaw were keeping tabs on them. Delson shook as he noticed the looming eyes staring at him intensely. Shit were directly in high evolutionary territory. Lynn clicks her lips, frustrated that they played a bad card. She looks at Goodboy to tell her the truth, which he shrugs with a shake of the head. Goodboy might have only been a slaver. Money is money, never asking questions. Would have appreciated it if we hadn't left my armor and tools back with a man we'd just met a few days ago. Calcanus said with a snark, annoying Lynn, making her grit her teeth. So I guess you're nothing without your armor, Tulee said with a cutesy voice, pissing Calcanus off, making a vein pop out. Calcanus smiles with devilish intent, making Tulee worried about what he was going to do. He just stares at her, while the crew waited to hear what he had to say. He was just trolling when Tulee figured that out. She reached for a choke. You bastard, Tulee snarls as she squeezes the hunter's throat, while he just watches her. The crew was already used to their bickering. Lynn just wasn't having it right now. Can y'all just mate in closed doors? We have a problem to deal with. Lynn shouted with irritation as Tulee became defensive. I would never. Tulee was about to defend her honor, but Lynn waved her hand to dismiss her. Whatever. There's an inn close by. It doesn't look like they're racist, Lynn said as they came to Madam's Inn. There was no sign saying no humans or half-borns, curious if they could stay for the night. Tulee was sulking behind her, letting her thoughts become words. You plan for this? Tulee directed her words at Calcanus, who winked at her. She snarled back, yet stopped when Lynn sighed with irritation. She readies herself to open the door as she voices her annoyance. Listen, you two, no matter what is going on with whatever that is, I need you to. She couldn't finish her thought when she opened the door. A Centelope male was coming out. He was wearing a navy blue coat with leather straps, the clothing of a well-off male. He had nicely groomed brown hair. His features were very soft, but his stubble was manly. Lynn was shocked by the man's appearance, blanking her stare while she looked up. Pardon me, missy, say, do you know where my pocket watch ran off to? The dashing Centelope said as Tulee stared behind Lynn. She flicked her ears with curiosity when the Centelope female thumped her foot in a slow beat. Tulee smiled. She only showed this blank stare to those she found attractive. Yet something was off when he said his question. She drooped her ears. No, I haven't seen your watch around. She got out of the dashing Centelope's way, which the Misfits found weird. Lynn was always confident, never the nervous maiden she'd seen before. The dashing Centelope smiles, whetting Juno's appetite and drive as a female, making her gasp with a blush. Calchonus gave the dashing male an angry squint, as the male ignored both. The dashing Centelope turned to Lynn, which made her freeze like a statue. "If you do find it, I'll offer you a reward. Surely I could give you what you want." The dashing Centelope waved at Lynn as he walked away. Juno stared at the male, finding his walk powerful and confident. Tulee was more concerned for Lynn, who was frozen like a statue. Lynn shakes her head, clearing her mind as she enters the inn. Tulee noticed that she was acting weird, coming inside with the rest of the Misfits. "Hi, I was wondering if you accept," Lynn asked the innkeeper before she slid a set of 2 keys to her. Tulee was the only one to notice that she hadn't put any coins down. Lynn was caught off guard, frozen by the random charity. Your stay had already been paid for by the nice gentleman before, 2 large rooms with 2 beds, ready for use, the Sithcutal innkeeper said with a smile. Lynn droops her ears with a hint of fear, causing Tulee to worry. She is acting weird, so Tulee reaches for the Centelope's shoulder. When Lynn just felt the hint of her hand, she gave it a soft slap. The others finally checked in with the 2, seeing that Lynn had already gotten some rooms. "Damn, Lynn, you work fast. Pass the boy's key over to me," Goodboy said, making Lynn look at the Infenril with tempered rage. Tulee didn't know what was going on, looking around while everyone else was focused on other things. Lynn grabs the keys with hesitation, passing the key off to Goodboy with a strained expression. Scene. Under the illumination of the coming moon, Lynn watches how bright it shines on her face. The boys are huddled in their own room. Juno and Ribley went out to buy some supplies at the local store. Tulee was supposed to join them, yet the door opened while Lynn flicked her ears. "I knew you would come," Lynn told Tulee as her eyes glowed with the glimmer of yellow topaz from the moon. Tulee walks through the door, making sure to lock it behind her. She passes the first bed covered with Juno's mage coat and Ribley's lute. Tulee lifts her tail and sits on the bed as Lynn turns to her. "Do you know that Centelope, Lynn?" Tulee asked Lynn, who jolts at the sound of the question. That told Tulee that she did, in fact, know the blue-coated Centelope. Lynn chuckles softly as she diverts her eyes back to the glow of the moon. "He was my ex. You know us Centelopes, we really get around," Lynn told Tulee with a bit of a crack in her voice. The whole fact that Lynn diverted her eyes was the sign that she was lying. Lyconians had a really good sense of smell compared to other sentients. They were second only to the great Calistocans. The Centelope might have had a black pelt over his light brown skin, yet his scent was familiar to her. It was faint, but he smelled similar to Lynn herself. "You never told me that you had a brother," Tulee said to Lynn, which made the Centelope turn back with a frizzed pelt. "You tell no one." Lynn walks toward the Lyconian, demanding this of her. Tulee droops her ears and her tail stops. Tulee thought that having a sibling was her right to know, especially since he came out of the blue. "What aren't you telling us, Lynn? Please talk to me," Tulee pleads, making the Centelope bite her lips in frustration. Lynn sighs and walks toward Tulee, wrapping her hands around the Lyconian's shoulders standing above her. She adds her weight down, Tulee having enough strength to fight it, but she lets the centerlope guide her to the bed. Lynn wraps her arms around Tulee, rubbing her head against her back. "How much you've grown," Lynn said, while she was choked with tears, making the Lyconian try to hold back her feelings. She was tough, an alpha within her clan, but when her older sister cried, she would too. Tulee never realized how small Lynn was compared to her. She was always larger in her memory. She forgot when she started to look down at her, the mind playing tricks. "Lynn, I can protect you," Tulee told Lynn, knowing that when she got like this, the future wasn't certain. She had done this before, right after her mate, Hayes, died a few years ago. She needs space, telling her that she would always love her, and disappearing into the night. "You don't need me anymore. You have Juno and Goodba," and Lynn listed before Tulee rotated her body, wrapping her arms around the brown rabbit. The tiny frame she had just sunk into her breast, Tulee didn't want to let go. "I won't let you leave, not in this town. Damn it, Lynn, whatever you're thinking, please don't do it." Tulee lets her fragile state out, pleading as the tears flowed from her eyes. Lynn looks up at the weeping Lyconian, wiping her tears as she slides her palm down her cheek. She wiggles her arms up, wrapping her arms around the Lyconian's neck. Tulee was not expecting what Lynn did next. Lynn locks her lips onto Tulee's, sucking deeply and melting the Lyconian's brains, making sure to keep a seal around their tender kiss. Tulee was conflicted by this show of love, feeling that it was wrong, but it felt so right. She had supple lips, tasting like grapes from a garden forbidden to her. It was wrong for her to do, yet she couldn't pull away. She was just going to let Lynn continue until she felt her slipping a small pill into her throat. She navigated it well, creeping her tongue down her throat until Tulee naturally swallowed it. Tulee pushes Lynn out of her arms, smacking away the seal. Lynn was fast and nimble, climbing over the Lyconian to grapple with her back. Tulee tried to lift her body up to gain leverage, but it was too late. Lynn prevented her arm movement, wrapping her arm around her throat so she couldn't make a loud peep. Tulee started to foam from her mouth as the centerlope drooped her ears and began to cry silently. "Sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry," Lynn said repeatedly as Tulee thrashes her body. The pill was making her calm, leaving her to drift into sleep. Lynn slowly weakens her grasp as the Lyconian started to fall asleep. Tulee desperately wanted this to stop, gasping in an attempt to stay awake. The mix of losing breath and the drug was finally settling in her. Tulee twitched her ears, hearing Lynn's final words. "Tell the brothers I love them. Tulee, please forget me," Lynn said as she broke down.